My name is Nyambura Mundia. I am the founding director of OSAWA and the lead convener of Women Leaders Hangout in Swaiba, the Audible African Woman. Today, we are excited to be having our guest whose name is Ebby Weyime, and I'm going to introduce her. Ebby, thank you. If you allow me, I will read your brief and we will go on with the conversation. Mm-hmm. So, Ebby is the founder of the Grace Cup. She's a certified menstrual hygiene trainer and a reproductive health advocate. She works with girls and women, training them on reusable period products, buying menstrual cups and cloth pads. She's also a former model and an actor who has worked in Cape Town for 6 years. She's passionate about young girls and in terms of empowering them regarding their choices. Now, the conversation we're going to have today is the conversation about menstrual hygiene management in the workspace. And I know I have met you in terms of personal needs. I keep saying Ebby solved one of my problems in terms of a menstrual conversation. But I have always every time I started the conversation with my friends, it came with a lot of disclaimers and that I had to, break a lot of barriers even among women. Mm-hmm. And so my first question to you, why is the menstrual conversation a conversation marred with a lot of stigma and shame, whilst it's a thing that women have to deal with for the rest of their lives?
For women. That's the answer. Yeah. Because I find that anything that has to do with a woman, and especially something that touches the vagina, it becomes people don't want to talk about it, or not enough interest is put in it. And unfortunately, in African cultures, when it comes to menstruation, there's a lot of stigma because of cultural beliefs and also our religious systems, how we're doing it religiously. I mean, people still talk of period as it's dirt, new chafu.
That's true. That is
true. So in some communities, you cannot even do some jobs because you're on your period. Like a year ago, I was working in Kakuma, and they're like, I cannot cook for my husband. If I'm on, it's that extreme.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yes, but there's no correlation. Like, why can't you cook for your husband because you're menstruating? Why can't you go to church because you're menstruating? So there's a lot of stigma, and it's taking a lot of time to just break it down and trying to make people understand that this is not anything to be ashamed about.
And when you say there's no correlation, it's one thing to hear that, but it's another one to leave it as a woman. Mm-hmm. Because I think when you're on your menstruation or you're on your periods, many things come to you. One is that people observe how you react emotionally as a person. Mm-hmm. And so for women in the workspaces or even young girls, it becomes problematic in terms of expressing themselves, because then if you say something that is not agreeable, the easiest thing that is thrown to you is, are you PMSing? And I find that not only very degrading for girls, but I'm like, why is something that women are going to have for the rest of their lives being used against them? In terms of discrediting them and their merit or their voice. Mm-hmm. So my question is, what education do we need to get people to stop using menstruation against women and girls?
I think first the boys need to be involved in this conversation, because I think we've really alienated them. And I find even when I do my trainings, I always train boys as well, because I'm like, they're living with us, so they need to understand it. And I find the moment you have the conversation with them and they understand, you kill their curiosity. The thing with boys is just curious. If they see a pack of pads, just tell them those are pads, this is what they're used for. And they'll never ask it again because they now know. But then if you keep hiding, then they will always be looking into your bag. They'll always be looking for things that may not even be related to the period, but because you're hiding it, it's a period of shame, then they want to expose you. They want to expose, But then if you have made it a very open, a very comfortable conversation, you're not ashamed of it, even if you stay in your dress, in your life.
That is true.
But because we've made it such a secret, then they're the ones. I find that it comes mostly from the men because they just don't understand it. I mean, there was a time when there was a shortage of tampons, and on Twitter, and women are complaining, what will you do with the tampons, blah, blah, and then the government said, oh, there's this problem with the shipping, but by the end of the month, it will be here. And people, men on Twitter, one of them was like, but why are women complaining? So mwambe itakuja end month, why are you still complaining? And you're like, do you think a period comes kama salo, like end month, so you have to wait for end month? but they really don't understand.
Yeah.
One is like, you're driving with your husband in your car, you're like, oh, we need to pass by the shop because I'm menstruating, I need a pad right now. They're like, why don't you just hold it? Home ni pale, so you just hold it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They think it's pee.
That's true. That's true.
But it's because they really don't know.
That is true.
And
when you say they don't really know, I think we don't see the effects of that in terms of productivity. And because today we are talking about the women worker in menstrual hygiene management, it would be nice if you painted a picture for us, like in terms of our workspaces. And when you say workspaces, it could be the corporate workspaces, but it could also be mama mboga or someone who works where there are no facilities, like a toilet,
Yeah.
So what are we looking at in terms of the problem? And what are the short-term short-term solutions that we could have? Because no woman or girl is skipping her menses or her period because there are no facilities, right? And it's that we can essentially see the impact of lacking these facilities in terms of the productivity of women or girls, whether it's missing school, whether it's a woman not showing up for work because she's in pain or she doesn't have the privacy she needs. Please talk to us about what are the short term or what are the doable things at this point.
It's only this year that we actually started now focusing on menstruation in the workplace, because for a long time we've been looking at girls in school, primary school, high school, which is great.
Yeah.
But then no one really thinks about the blue collar woman,
Yes.
the working poor, people working in factories, people working in farms, like they're earning a salary, yes, but it's not enough for them to sustain a whole family. And when you look at the hierarchy of needs, a pad is not really at the top of that.
It doesn't make to the list.
And then you can imagine this is a menstruating mother with 3 other menstruating children.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah, that's true.
Because you're not just budgeting for yourself, you're budgeting for your kids as well. So now it's getting to a point where we now have to start looking at what happens, like for example, like the project that we're doing right now, they got sinks to wash their hands, which they did not have. Can you imagine? They didn't even have sinks to wash their hands.
Which is basic.
Yes, they're being given clean toilets because cleanliness is also very important. Sanitizers, but what really impressed me about this project is they also have like a pad dispenser where they're not being charged. So in case you have like just an emergency, you go and take one. But then it's a pilot project just to see, will it improve productivity in the workplace? Because as a woman, because it's such a period of shame, when you're not coming to work, you don't really say, I'm not coming to work because I have a period.
That is true.
No one ever says that.
No.
And most bosses will look at you as, see, it's a period, why are you not coming to work?
Yeah.
They don't really understand.
That's a
flimsy excuse. Because they're like, will it be like every month you'll be having this, plus you've been having a period since you're 13, take control of yourself.
That is true.
But they don't really understand that there's some women who have crippling cramps when they're having their period. They really cannot do anything. Others is just because they lack the product. So maybe they're using like cotton wool and things like that. And then if it's a demanding job, a waitress, for example, of someone where you're standing for a long time, you're worried about soaking your dress. You're worried about sitting at one place for a long time because when you stand up, you have to be the last person to stand up because you're not very sure. Maybe you're using toilet paper. You're not really using the right products. So you want to see, when you give a woman the right period product, will it improve productivity? The same way as we're looking at when the girls in school have the right period product, do they attend class more?
Yeah.
You see,
yeah.
So it's
exactly.
And even just a basic thing as women who have their maids at home, what do they use? Do you know what they use? Are you even concerned to know what they use?
Yeah, do you include that in the shopping?
Yes.
In your own shopping?
Exactly. Especially when say this is a maid that's working for you, maybe she's a day scholar, so she has daughters back at home. What do they use? Because again, hierarchy of needs, the pad doesn't really feature on that list.
That is true.
And that is also why we're now really pushing onto reusable period products. So let them get the menstrual cups or let them get the washable pads, because then you've empowered them. They're not begging at your door every month or every 30 days. Yes, there's dignity. So you've given them those washable pads, and then they know that when it comes to a period, I'm sorted. I don't have to think about it.
I think when we talk about equitable workspaces and decent workspaces, it's often that we think about pay, or promotion. But it's interesting that as employers never look at how how some of these things affect women specifically, like the provision of a toilet, where it is there enough water, what are the bins, you know what, and such things. So and I know for women who work in offices, the conversation is more privileged than women who work in informal sectors. It would be lovely if you talked about provision of facilities as a way of making our workspaces more equitable and decent.
Yeah, there's still a long way to go. Like you just said, the woman in the office is privileged to have a decent toilet and probably toilet paper and water to wash their hands. But then we don't really think about what about that mama in Gikomba who has to wake up every day to be in Gikomba by say 6 a.m, and she's going to be there all the way till evening. What kind of facilities do they have? And those facilities, even if they're paying for them, are they clean? Do they have the space? How big is that cubicle for them to actually navigate and change their pad or their tampon or their cup? So we need, when you talk about menstruation, it's not just about the products alone, but also what kind of facilities are available for them. Like the project that we're doing at EPZ, like just having something like soap, for example, to wash your hands before you touch a sanitary product, you really have to have clean hands.
Yes.
Now we are lucky that we have sanitizers everywhere, but what are people doing? So we're looking at it as a full package. How can we best what product or what thing can we give to this woman when it comes to menstruation that can improve productivity? Because I know of a lot of women that don't show up to work, whether it's a corporate, whether it's a blue collar job, they just don't show up to work. There's this company in Germany, a small startup that had about 12 employees and around 5 or 6 women. And the CEO, who's a guy, realized that at a certain point of the month, close to end of the month, most of the women don't show up to work, or they all of a sudden they're sick, or they want to work from home and whatever. And it takes someone who's very keen to notice a pattern emerging. So he said for everyone, the last week of the month, they can work from home. And that was before COVID.
Nice. Yeah.
So it was just to facilitate, to just help the women to make it easier. And they actually noticed productivity go up, because this woman is now more comfortable. If she has any cramps, she can lie on her bed. She can work from her bed. She doesn't have to sit up and in an office. And she also doesn't have to ask for permission to leave. And because again, they won't say, I'm leaving because I have cramps. They will say something else.
Yeah.
So you need to be a very empathetic person as a leader for you to actually notice or just be in touch with what's happening. Because most women will not tell you. Even when it comes to house helps, for example, you just notice at a certain point around the same time of the month, they either don't show up to work, or they want to sleep in, or their work is very shoddy. They don't really... or they're very clumsy, A person or an employer that's very in tune will start noticing these patterns and start looking at the problem. Is it that you don't have the right products? Do you not have the right facilities? Or do you need painkillers? Just to make... And I believe the moment the woman is comfortable during her period, her productivity will definitely go up.
Wow. Which is profitability for
for everyone. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's also a profitable. It's also a profit strategy for employers.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win situation for all of us. Now, it's funny you say that, because a friend of mine once said that until the husband got her as a wife, he never really thought about menstruation and how that affects women. But because she has painful and heavy menses, since then, the husband has been able to be nicer to the women, including giving them menses off days. And she says it took him, seeing her not being able to leave bed at all, because her menses are very painful, for him to think, oh wow,
what about the rest?
Yeah, exactly.
What about my employees?
Exactly. And so, as you said earlier, I think education is the one surest way around this.
Men cannot be exempted from this conversation.
No, they can't. One, it's also because, as it is, and as we still work for around equity, is that they hold positions of power more than women.
Yes.
So it's that if we are going to have this conversation, whether it's facilities, whether it's waste management, whether it's production, we have to make sure that men are part of this conversation.
We keep saying this all the time. If men were menstruating, I'm telling you, pads would be free. This would not be an issue. But then unfortunately, because most decision makers are men, and most of them are not in tune with what's happening with women, that's why there's this whole lag. You know, people still don't see it as a very important topic.
It's not. It's yeah, and it's not. It's not a basic as basic should go.
It's not priority. It's not a priority.
Which is very sad.
You know, and it's not a priority from the top level of government, and it's also not a priority in the household. You know, in Busia, the girls that were having sex with boda men for them to have pads, the moms would say, "Missing a pesa, I've already given you food, I've already paid for school, pads wejipange." So you're like, this is a child in high school, and ajipanga natoa pesa wapi if you're not the one giving them money. And as a parent, you should ask yourself, if I'm not buying you pads, where are you getting this money for pads from? Who's giving you this money? And these men know, and they take advantage of that.
I think the thing with menstruation hygiene management, I mean, it's that menstrual hygiene management is that so long as we treat it as an isolated issue and a women's issue, we don't see how it impacts society in terms of either whether it's education for a child, on how far a girl child, on how far she can go, or even sexual reproductive health for and the choices she's able to make. Because what you just said is, if a girl had the pads, she would not end up being taken advantage of, being exploited by someone on a higher space, who in this case is a border person, right? And so I think so long as we keep isolating the issue, we're not able to see how it affects the rest of development.
Do you know the kind of Kenya or the kind of Nairobi that I wish for? I wish that for one day we just see random women walking around with packs of pads. Because if you think about it, pads are already wrapped enough. Like, they don't need to be wrapped anymore. Why are you putting them in newspapers and then in another bag, then in another bag? I wish we'll just hold it the same way you'd come from your shop buying bread. You don't put it in bags and bags. You just carry it. With the pads, I wish there'll just be a situation where, like, we're just walking around Kencom, umetoka supermarket, you're just carrying your pad. You know,
true.
That is the kind of, and that is the way we're going to start the conversation. Because someone will be like, why are you carrying those? Oh, they're pads. I am bleeding. What do you want me to do?
I hear you.
You know?
I hear you. Yeah, but as you said earlier in this conversation, the fact that even in our religions, menstruation is looked upon as that or not worthy or less than of a human being during that time, and yes.
In some communities that actually send the women to the forest to just go sit somewhere else, and then after 4 days you can come back.
Goodness.
It's that
I even didn't know that. Like,
it's
I
a
myself
thing.
is shocked.
Yeah. They'll be sent away to go bleed, and then you can come back and join society when you're done. It's that bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that brings me to, if you are that far in terms of having this conversation, and this is a field that you work, which I think is very isolated and very lonely and strength to you, what are your boldest, like, when you look at the situation or the problem itself, what are your boldest solutions around menstrual hygiene management?
Well, one, we need to break the silence.
Yeah.
Even before we get to the products, we need to break the silence. Let us have a conversation. Let us have this girl at 13 years old who's just started her period and her mom is not around. Don't wait for your mom to come back in the evening. Your dad is in the house. That is your father. Why can't you go to your dad and say, hey, I've started my period. I need money for pads. You know, there's a situation where I saw where the girl literally stayed in the house waiting for the mother to come back in the evening. The dad was there, the brother was there. Throughout, they had the money, but she could not get herself to ask for money for pads because she was waiting for the mom. But then if menstruation would be a dinner table conversation, leo siku imekuwa mbaya, leo nimekuwa na cramps, leo cramps zimeniweza. And it's true, it's pain. Just because it's pain associated with my vagina or associated with my uterus, all of a sudden we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
But then if I go to work and say, hey, today I had this crippling headache the whole day, no one bats an eye. But to say, oh, lucky nilikuwa na cramps, today I had cramps the whole day, all of a sudden, why are you telling us? But it's pain.
Yeah.
You know?
So perception is different.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need to break the silence. That's number one. Two, don't wait for the girl to get to menstruating age for you to start talking about it. Menstruation conversations should start as early as 9 years old, because from 9, that's around class 4. From around 9 years old, the girl may start menstruating.
That is true.
So prepare her. Just say, one day when this happens, don't be afraid. When you see blood coming out, don't panic. It doesn't mean anything. Just come to me. I'll give you the products, and let them just understand that it's nothing to be ashamed of. Actually, what we're working on is I've seen people in India doing this thing called a Minaki party. Minaki is the first sighting of blood for the woman. And during that, they have this huge party. You know, like they'll throw you a party. It's as if you're graduating.
Wow. Nice.
You know, and I'm thinking, well, in Africa, we're always doing that. We're doing that with when men are getting circumcised, especially in the Luya community. Like, it's a huge thing. People will go to the road, will have bulls. Like, it's a party. I'm telling you, people spend hundreds of thousands just for this one ceremony, which is not really necessary. I mean, you can choose not to do it. But then you see with a period, you cannot choose. You don't choose if you're going to have this period or not. So why are we not celebrating? Because when a man is circumcised, the whole village knows about it. But then when a woman starts a period, something that she cannot control, all of a sudden, only tell your mom. Only your mom should know about it. Do not touch boys, because now you can get pregnant. So you're already shaming her from the ground up. This is the foundation that she's getting. But then if we start to celebrate periods, she got her period, so we're gonna book a hotel and we're gonna dress you up and you're gonna get gifts and your uncles are gonna come. It's not just a woman thing. Also, men are invited and we're gonna cut a cake and it's gonna be a beautiful affair. You know. So when we start having such conversations, even when it comes to sex talk, then it will be such an easy thing to
transit to.
Yes, because if you cannot talk about menstruation, how are you going to talk to your girl about sex and about boys? How are you going to have that conversation?
That is true.
Yeah.
But do you think when we start to talk about to girls about menstruation, can we also talk to the boys? Because I feel like now, I mean, we are four girls in our family, and so my father and my brother had to just know what medicine to bring or what products to bring. But I feel like not every man has that luxury, or maybe the social norms around that do not, as you said, truly not allow girls to just say this is a need. It's almost like you can talk about school fees, which is a lot of money, but don't talk about your menses. So what is the entry point with boys? Like when, because I feel like they told things in euphemism, and so they understand that for the rest of their lives. There's a friend of mine who says that he said she asked for pads and was bought Pampers, and I'm like, my God, how do you confuse those two things?
Yeah.
And so I understand. Perhaps all he had for the rest for all his life was euphemism of what pads are.
Yes.
So if we start the conversation that's soon for girls, when
I always say, catch them when young.
That is true.
Get them, just nip it in the bud. So when I'm going for training for those girls in primary school, I'm like, the first session, the boys have to be there. We train everyone the same. And then, of course, there's some questions that the girls are still very shy to ask, so the boys will be excused. But at least they know the basics. They know that this happens and this is something very, very normal. I feel like when it comes to the older generations, for some of them, unfortunately, that ship has sailed. There is no way you're going to introduce that topic and they're still comfortable. There are men up to now, they cannot say the word vagina in public. They can't. You know, when I was, a few years ago when I was starting the Grace Cup, I remember one of the first interviews I went to, we're talking about a menstrual cup. You're going to be inserted in the vagina. They're like, oh, you can't say vagina on TV. I'm like, oh, well, then what do I call it?
What do we say?
And you have to teach people that vagina is not a bad word. It's not a dirty word. And also it's very good to teach them while young, especially for girls. They actually, now research shows there's a lot of abuse among the young girls because, again, the mother has already shamed her when it comes to the vagina. Don't touch it, don't look at it, don't talk about it, don't do anything. So I'm like, this 7-year-old goes out and then is raped or is touched inappropriately. How will this 7-year-old come back to you and say, hey, uncle touched me. Alikushika wapi? You don't even have a name for it. How? Plus, you've already told them this is a very shameful thing. And this uncle has already told her, don't say anything. You see, so this girl is left. I cannot talk to my mom. I can't talk to my uncle, and I'm getting abused. So we should have these open conversations about talking about our bodies. I keep telling women, look at it, see it. It's yours. There's nothing wrong.
That's true.
There's nothing wrong in seeing it.
And I remember, the first time I heard that, I was like, that is very bold of Ebby to tell women. Because I saw people's reactions even in the comments in terms of, it's almost that like we have to alienate ourselves from that part of our bodies and the rest of our bodies, which is not possible. But before we close, I would want us, I tell me if I cut you short on the solutions. But I feel like you're one, in terms of advancing gender equality, I think one of the things that helps women is when they can own the innovations. And I feel like the work you've done with the Grace Cup is actually that you have been able to innovate and bring a product in Kenya, which is from, I don't want to preempt this conversation, so you go ahead and tell us about the grace cup?
So I feel like when it comes to menstruation, the future is reusable. That's it's whether you like it or not. That is where we're moving to. So I deal with the menstrual cup and also deal with the cloth pad. So these are reusable period products. The disposable ones are good, but then they're not really a sustainable option. So the good thing about reusables is, one, it's good for your health in terms of there are no chemicals. There's really nothing put in it that will give you any infection. So there are no chemicals. There are no. It's good for your pocket because this is one cup will last you for 10 years. Look at that investment. So to put it into perspective, if this girl starts menstruating at age, say, 13 and she's in class 7, she'll only stop using the cup at age 23. So basically, we've taken her through primary, high school, and college or university. Imagine you've taken her through all that. Imagine how much you're saving this girl. Also, it's good for the environment. Do you know how many times when I go to rural schools that have the pit latrine, and the principal always keeps saying, choza wasichana zinajaa haraka. And I'm like, do you think zinajaa because they're pooping and peeing more than the boys? Yeah. No, it's period products that are in there. So, and you know, with a pit latrine, the moment it's full, you just cover it and you go dig another one. And with time, we would have dug the whole of Kenya. We will have no more space. And now it's proven that disposable period products take about 800 years to decompose.
Interesting.
So basically, the very first pad that I used is still lying somewhere in this Nairobi of ours. It's still somewhere, you know. So you can imagine how many pads have just been thrown just today in Nairobi. Now multiply it by the rest of Kenya, the rest of Africa, and the rest of the world. So do you see how badly we are affecting the environment because of something that we don't choose? I mean, it's a period, we have to do something about it. But why can't we do it sustainably?
That is true. And it's unfortunate how even we're talking about, you know, climate change, a sustainable, use of land. And I'm thinking, if truly it takes that long for a part to dispose or to just, then why are we not having this conversation with women in the middle of it? Because I feel like waste management is a serious conversation, but then the people who could actually save
change.
Bring change and save the billions of money or billions of Kenya shillings or dollars are not being part of it, because reusable, seriously, does not only help the woman in terms of it gets you until a girl can get considerable purchasing power, but it also saves.
Two problems with that. One is we live in a microwave age, the microwave age where we want things chop, you know. So when someone tells you use a cloth pad, then it means you have to go home and wash it. You're like, but this one I can just take it and throw it. You see, because we live in that, we want that chop kind of thing. You want pizza, you want frozen pizza. You don't want to start to make it from scratch. You want things very fast. But then what repercussions are there from that? And then two, there's this perception that reusable period products are for the poor, which is a huge one, especially here. And it's funny that my friends in Europe, especially in Germany, because now the cups are like a norm. They're like sold in shops and everything. And cups are seen for the elite. They're like, oh, you use a cup. Oh, fancy. You know, they're looked at as this really urban thing. But then in Kenya, people look at cups and cloth pads, they're like, oh, you don't have money. That's why you're using those ones. You know, that it's amazing the kind of perception that people have. Yeah. So it's taken me a long time to to change it. And I think part of the reason why this started is, again, it came from a good place, but then it's bad in terms of the first time most people interacted with a cup is they saw them being donated in Kibera, being donated somewhere in Marakwet. So the perception is, oh, if you don't have money for pads, then you can use a cup. But they don't understand that actually they have it the right way, you see. And now I'm starting to see more and more urban women converting to pads. To cups, yes. Yeah. Actually, when I started the business, my whole idea was I want to help that marginalized woman. But then you go to a place like, say, Kariobangi, and then you're telling them about the cup. Then they ask you, but ule msichana wa Lavington anatumianga gani? Anatumianga hii? Kama atumii hii, mi nataka yenye msichana wa Lavington anatumia. So we had to change the whole formula and start getting from the girl at the top, and then the message will slowly come down. So like they see this woman in Karen is using anaoshanga pads zake, like she literally uses cloth pads. Then they're like, if this woman in Karen is washing a cloth pad, then it must be good. So I also want to use that cloth pad.
That is an interesting perspective. I had never looked at it in terms of that.
Because there's always that. There's the what do you call it? There's always that you want to achieve. You want to get to that level of that woman. So if this woman is using a cup and she's saying it's good, then it must be good. So maybe if I use a cup, I'm going to look like her. Maybe I'm going to drive a car like hers. I mean, you know.
It's funny how these conversations, you could be having a conversation and then you realize that actually class, privilege, and other intersections have everything to do with it. Yeah, and I'm glad you take that out. I mean, you elaborate that as well. And I'm wondering whether we're doing enough in terms of just letting people know these things. And I think I'll take it up. Now, I will not let you go without telling us, what book are you reading? Or what movie are you watching?
Oh my God. Okay. When it comes to reading, I must say I'm doing very, very poorly. I've been having this book by my bedside that's been there for, I think, almost a year. And I've been reading so slowly. Nice. I know. It's so bad. I've been reading it so slowly. It's called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And I have the omnibus, so I have like the big one, which is still not an excuse to not have finished it. But that is what I'm currently reading. But I've been watching a lot of stuff. I watch because I work from home, so sometimes you have like something maybe playing in the background and you're working, and sometimes you just have to sit down and actually watch something. I'm currently watching Schitt's Creek. Schitt's Creek. It's a comedy. It's comedy. I actually knew about them because they won the Emmys. They won so many whatever awards. Then I was like, what show is this? So I started watching it, and it's amazing. It's fantastic. I love it. Yeah.
Good for you. Thank you for gracing us, and I think we will stop here. And thanks for being a guest and educating us. I feel like we need to talk about other issues like sexual harassment at work, and how that borders in terms of
and also female choices.
Female choices.